morning, my name is Magdalena Kutnik. I'm the head of the biology lab at FCBA, which is a French technological institute for forestry, construction, furniture and paper. Today, I would like to make a presentation about termites, wood-boring beetles and other insects, and especially to discuss the present and the emerging risks of infestation in timber structures. We are all familiar with wood-boring insects, often since our childhood. We all saw at least once in our lives beams with apparent galleries made by woodworms, pieces of old furniture or wooden icons spotted with tiny holes in old churches, houses, castles and other historic buildings. And we assume that, well, it doesn't really matter. The insects are gone and the wood is still here, sometimes after more than 100 years. However, the pieces of wood that survived despite the insects which attacked them are often made of oak, chestnut tree, walnut tree, Siberian larch. They resisted biological threat because they were made of naturally durable wood species. Wood is a fantastic source of food. It contains different forms of sugar, such as starch and cellulose, and it offers a shelter for wood-boring larvae. Wood comprises different parts, whose chemical composition is very different. Sapwood is the outermost part of the tree, the living tree. It conducts water from the roots to the leaves and stores up the reserves prepared in the leaves, which means good food for wood-degrading insects. Sapwood is regarded as never resistant to biological agents, which means that sapwood will be gone within several years if it's not treated or protected. Heartwood is a deadwood. It's usually more durable than sapwood, but actually the durability of the heartwood is an inherent property of each wood species and vary among the different wood species. European forests are very rich in terms of timber species diversity. However, many very abundant species, which are broadly used in the construction sector in Europe, are poorly durable when it comes to insects, such as spruce, fir, beech, poplar. Fortunately, the heartwood of many widely used species can resist wood-boring beetles, such as different types of pines, Douglas fir, larch, oak, while the sapwood can be degraded. Depending on the wood species and the relative abundance of sapwood, insect attacks can be only superficial and cause mostly aesthetic damage, or sometimes severely affect the mechanical resistance of the attacked piece of wood. You will certainly tell me that there are many examples of old constructions made of spruce or other poorly durable softwood species which stand still after hundreds of years in different parts of Europe. How could it be? Insects can degrade many wood species, but insects are not present everywhere at any time. The risk for a wooden structure to be degraded by insects depends on many factors and somehow it's a statistical risk. Within the CLICKdesign project, we made an inventory of wood-boring species across Europe and identified at least 83 insect species, which evidence of attack can be found in buildings. Some of them are so-called fresh wood species. They infest freshly sown and humid wood, but because the larvae of this insect species live inside the wood during several years, mature insects can emerge from wood after it has been processed and used for construction, but they will never come back. Some insect species use wood as shelter for their breed, but they don't feed on it. It's the case, for example, of the carpenter bee. It's just laying eggs inside the wood, but it's not eating wood. Some species can attack wood only if it has been decayed by fungi, such as, for example, the deathwatch beetle. Several wood-boring beetles are highly dependent on the type of the wood and are able to settle only in softwood species or only in hardwood species. This is the case for the Lyctus beetle, for example. And finally, several species are able to degrade any type of wood, and termites belong to this last group. Wood-boring beetles occur everywhere in Europe, but every species has its own optimal developing conditions when it comes to temperature and humidity, which means a specific distribution range. Because insects don't regulate the temperature of their body, they can tolerate only a given range of external temperatures. They can be killed by very low or very high temperatures. Within our CLICKdesign project, we decided to focus on 2 species and draw a distribution map for the 2 species that can cause the most significant damage to wood used in construction in Europe, the furniture beetle Anobium punctatum and the longhorn beetle Hylotrupus bajulus. Furthermore, these 2 species are the models used to evaluate the efficacy of the wood preservatives according to European standards and according to the biocidal products regulation. Anobium is found everywhere in Europe, while Hylotrupus is not present in the very north of Europe. Among the other beetles able to degrade wood, we can find both insects which distribution range is limited to the warmest part of Europe and insects showing preferences for cooler areas. With the global warming and depending on the insect species considered, the distribution range may expand over time or at the opposite, narrow and disappear. Another consequence of global warming is the modification of insects' life cycle. This is how the typical life cycle of wood-boring beetles looks like. Adults emerge from wood during spring or summer, mate, the female lay eggs in cracks on the wood surface, and the larvae will eat wood during several years before they can turn into a new adult. Global warming can enlarge the time frame when adult insects can mate and disseminate. It can even completely disrupt their biological cycle. Moreover, the duration of the larval stage can be shortened by a side effect of the global warming. Indeed, higher temperatures usually speed up the growth of the trees, with the possible consequence of having fast-growing trees being less dense than slow-growing ones, with higher sugar content and thus less durable to insect attack. Insect larvae developing inside of wood with improved feeding properties will require less time before they can metamorphose and give new adults, able to infest new pieces of wood. But let's talk a bit about termites. In Europe, we can find 2 groups of termites with different biology, behavior, feeding preferences, and distribution: the subterranean termites and the drywood termites. The natural habitat of termites in Europe is the forest, where they feed mainly on dead wood, and they are really beneficial for the forestry ecosystems. Other European subterranean termites display similar feeding behavior and social organization. They are social insects that live in social units called colonies. Colonies may contain thousands to millions of individuals, which are organized in different castes, workers, soldiers, and nymphs developing into primary or secondary reproductives. They have really complex organization of their nestmates. Workers are the most numerous caste, and they are in charge of finding and collecting wood for the rest of the colony, which means they are the only ones really able to damage to degrade wood. The wood-boring beetles, termites reproduce continuously during the year. Colonies have a variable number of breeding individuals, which mate and produce eggs throughout the year and can live for several years. Workers also show developmental flexibility, which means that they can switch to another caste if needed, for example to become secondary reproductives. This flexibility of the workers is the basis of the success of termite infestation, especially in urban areas. If a colony happens to be divided, for example when an attack by ants destroys a part of the colony, when, for example, underground tunnels collapse, isolating a group of workers from the rest of the colony, or when infested materials are moved for building purposes, even very small groups of workers, several dozens of workers, can produce secondary reproductives, which may initiate a new colony. Nowadays, these insects are part of our urban environment and invade homes. Subterranean termites are the ones responsible for the most common type of termite infestation. They usually invade buildings from the ground below, as they are subterranean. They can pass through ceiling joists, masonry cracks, pipes, sanitary voids, and finally reach wood and degrade wood. Once a year, they swarm and flying insects can enter through openings such as windows. However, in urban environments, invasions through swarming are not very successful, and most of the flying insects die. So the infestation are really mostly made through the ground. Finally, human activities, including the transport of wood, ground, or building materials, can contribute to the dissemination of the insects. I just would like to focus on the pictures I put on the right bottom corner, showing a piece of wood with termites inside and termites trying to find their ways to other sources of food. They build so-called mud tunnels made with soil, and you can really see that termites try to go in every direction for search of a new source of food. So they really can invade every part of the ground, every part of the colony can move and try to find new source of food, which is really impressive. Subterranean termites feed upon the cellulose containing wood or other materials such as paper, cardboard, textiles, and bio-based building materials. The most serious harm they cause to the building structures is due to the degradation of the wooden elements, in particular those ensuring the solidity of the building structure, such as wooden frames, load-bearing elements, and structural panels. Other non-cellulosic construction materials, such as plaster, plastics, polymers, which are not eatable for termites, they are not a source of food, but they can be degraded because of the tunneling behavior of the termites. As I said just before, they tunnel in each direction for search of food, and they can cross different materials even if they are not really feeding on them. These types of degradations contribute to significantly weakening the structure and the performance of buildings, sometimes even leading to their collapse in the most extreme cases. Moreover, termites bring outside humidity into buildings, inducing conditions of insalubrity and generating optimal factor for the development of molds and sometimes more aggressive rot fungi. The particular biology of termites places the risk of degradation by these insects at a very different and higher level than those represented by other groups of wood-boring insects. But again, the most harmful termites are subterranean termites in Europe. Native drywood termites of the genus Calotermes rarely affect buildings, and the economic consequences are very limited compared to those of subterranean termites. The distribution of termite species tends to follow the patterns of their temperature and moisture preferences. They occur mainly in the south of Europe and along the Atlantic coast, where the conditions of temperature and humidity are particularly conducive to their development. To date, 7 species of subterranean Reticulitermes termites, several being regarded as invasive species, now belong to the European landscape. In addition, records about Coptotermes termites, which are native only in the tropical areas, were found in Italy. The key question is how far from their current range these termite species will be able to spread in 20 or 50 years. Worldwide, approximately 28 termite species are considered invasive and have spread beyond their native ranges, often with significant economic consequences. It's the case even in Europe. The North American species Reticulitermes flavipes has been introduced to the French area of Charente-Maritime several hundreds of years ago and spread to different parts of France and even to Italy and to Spain. This species has been recorded in the German city of Hamburg in 1934. Now the infestation is gone, but it really lasted for many, many years. The non-urban area of distribution of this species is restricted to French forests located along the Atlantic coast. However, flavipes, the species flavipes, was able to establish really in many urban areas, and it's very virulent and not really sensitive to human activity. So it's really spreading in different parts of France and different parts of Europe now. Another species coming from the Balkan area and which is present in Greece, Reticutermes urbis, is also regarded as an invasive species, and it's spreading to Italy and to France. Few words about the drywood termites in Europe. The native European drywood termites belong to the genus Calotermes. They are distributed along most of the Mediterranean coast areas. The species Calotermes is a so-called yellow-necked termite due to the yellowish color of the necks of the flying adults. So this termite has always been considered as not really important with low economic consequences. However, another species, Cryptotermes, which is a tropical termite species, is multiplying in Europe. Cases of damage are multiplying in the south of Europe, in Spain, France, Portugal, Italy, but also in Germany and in the UK. This species can be easily introduced from tropical areas through pieces of furniture or art craft or in wood-based packaging materials, but normally this species doesn't settle and spread in temperate climates. However, more and more, we can see that Cryptotermes species can adapt and can cause very impressive damage. The infestation in the Azores island of Terceira, which is not a tropical island, is a famous example of its appetite for destruction. The presence of the termite species in Europe needs really to be carefully monitored and treated very seriously in the coming years. So, as we can see, global warming is conducive to the establishment in Europe of accidentally introduced tropical termite species. Climate change and globalization are driving the spread of invasive species. The rate of establishment on non-native insect species is increasing exponentially since the beginning of the 20th century. But for native and well-established termite species, global warming may result in increased frequency of swarming events, and thus increase the risk of building infestation. As I mentioned before, adult termites swarm when the weather begins to warm, usually in early spring in March-April. Thousands of swarmers from many colonies take flight, find a partner, mate, and search for a good place to start a new colony. Drywood Calotermes termites can swarm frequently a second time in September-October in the warmest regions of Europe. Under natural conditions, the temperature recorded in wintertime is too low to permit the flights to happen. However, this natural phenomenon can be disturbed by the surrounding conditions, heating conditions, and now winter swarmings of subterranean termites in heated urban areas are frequently and more frequently reported. But insect risk for constructions is not only subjected to climate, it depends also on the materials used. Due to their positive environmental attributes and their performance, the use of bio-based materials such as flax, hemp, straw, bamboo, rattan, reed, wool has been increasing in the construction industry across Europe. They are for roofing, wall construction, wall clothing. They are used as insulation materials. However, bio-based materials are frequently poorly resistant to insect attack and offer food and shelter to many insect species, including non-wood borers. Once entering in a structure, subterranean termites also can degrade unprotected cellulose materials such as bio-based insulation materials and various non-cellulosic materials encountered during their search for food. Thus, bio-based materials may require protection by biocidal products or other protective means if a biological risk in a given environment is proven. I will not talk too much about wood preservation. Otherwise, we will need another half an hour. However, I don't want you to believe that we cannot do nothing and that insects are fatality. It's important to be aware that insects will not damage wood-based material which are either naturally durable. There are many species, European species, able to resist wood beetles attack. This is not so much the case when we talk about termite infestation, because only Robinia, black locust, is classified as durable against termites, and oak, Swiss chestnut are the two species with a moderate resistance. So termites are a really specific problem, but many wood species are able to resist attack by wood-boring beetles. We can also protect wood with biocides. Biocides are principally meant to protect the sapwood, which is not durable. It's important to use biocides which are classified, evaluated, authorized under the BPR, which is a biocide product regulation. But there are many very efficient products. Wood can also be protected thanks to different modification processes, such as thermal treatment, acetylation. This treatment can improve hardness, induce the loss of attractive effect, or make the wood impossible to digest for insects. Another option is to have wood being out of reach from the insects, for example by using physical protections, physical barriers. This is typically the case for termite protection. Houses can be protected by systems, physical systems, which are protecting the interface between the building and the ground below, with systems which are not possibly be crossed by termites, like metallic meshes, for example, as you can see on the pictures. Regulations and construction rules have an important role to play, especially in termite countries. France is a European exception, as it's the only country with a termite law, so it's a so-called French termite law, which is quite old now. It has more than 20 years. And this law says that in all parts of France with termite problems, wood needs to be durable or protected when it's used for structural purpose. And in the most damaged and most invaded areas, there's an obligation to protect the interface between the ground and the soil through physico-chemical or physical barriers, as I just showed previously. So we have quite a strong regulation, and really the aim is to protect the owner and to protect the constructions. European countries, which also have to face termite problems and quite strong termite problems, Italy, Portugal and Spain, there's not really regulation. In Italy, a regulation was set up in the 50s and finally it was abandoned. Nowadays, the termite problem is still there, but no legislation or national program of control are present. In Portugal, there is a law only for the Açores, a regional law, and in Spain, it's also a typical situation when the current regulation on urban planning require a building assessment report, but nothing really focused on the termite problem. Spanish colleagues wanted to build up a termite law similar to the French one, but I think the work is still in progress, but they don't have a law at this stage. A word about Slovenia, at least what I know about the situation in Slovenia. Drywood termites, Calotermes flavicolis, and subterranean termites, Reticulotermes lucifugus, occur very locally in Slovenia, mainly on the seaside, but they can cause damage which is not regarded as economically important. So they are not considered so far as major pests. There is no national regulation, and there are no specific provisions for use classes 1 and 2, which means wood used inside of the houses. Basically, the notion is that dried wood is not interesting to insects and will not be damaged by insects. However, some Slovenian timber housing companies have had problems when exporting their houses on foreign markets. They were asked how they tackle durability problems when it comes to insects. And because wood is very often not treated, they didn't really have an answer to this question. What I heard from Miha Humar, a famous Slovenian researcher, is that there are some attempts to build up for a monitoring project in Slovenia. Finally, I come to the conclusions. So, what about biological agents degrading construction material? Which is the situation now? Which is the situation in the future? We can see that biological agents, especially insects, which are able to degrade wood and other construction materials, are more and more diverse. Generally, the insect risk, and especially the termite risk, must be taken into account in the countries of Southern Europe. Their distribution is affected by global warming. Higher temperatures also impact the life cycles of wood-boring insects, both beetles and termites, shortening larval cycles, increasing the frequency of termite swarming events. And thus, they improve their invasive and destructive capacities. The reality of the climate change must be taken into account in the CLICKdesign project in order to develop realistic predictive tools. Indeed, the expected service life for buildings is often of more than 100 years, so it's therefore essential to integrate and to anticipate the effects of climate change as much as possible at the design stage and at the stage of selecting the building materials. The increase in the demand for wood products for construction, linked with the growth of human population and global warming, are parameters that will mostly likely affect and favor the spread of the pest species beyond their natural distribution ranges. We have to face imported and invasive insect species which may show different feeding and nesting preferences, and also they can be possibly more resistant to traditional preservatives. So we can come to the stage when it will be very hard to deal with new insect species, invasive species, with our traditional preservatives and traditional solution used. Using new materials, mostly bio-based materials, possibly can bring new species inside of our houses. We need to use durable materials. We need to set up relevant insect management strategies. Develop and provide architects, designers, builders with relevant building rules and general good practice rules. We need to produce guidance documents. And finally, we really need to promote education of all users, including final users and owners as well. At the end of my presentation, I thank you for your kind attention. Here is a picture of the CLICKdesign team. We are really happy to work on this project together. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation and I look forward to your questions.